You're watching Fugitive Red-Eye, and welcome to another anime review. Today I'll be reviewing the Devilman OVA trilogy. Now, if you've been watching my channel for a while, then you know that I am a huge fan of Devilman, and I've talked about it multiple times on the channel before. So, it's pretty surprising that it took me this long to actually watch the OVAs. Prior to this, I had seen the 70s series, read the manga, seen Crybaby, and read many of the sequels and seen many of their adaptations, as well as seen quite a lot of the crossover OVAs as well, such as Go Nagai World, Cyborg 009 vs. Devilman, and Mazinger Z vs. Devilman. But for some reason, I didn't watch the OVAs until recently. Now, since I've talked about Devilman multiple times on this channel, I'm not gonna do the whole long story recap that I usually do in these reviews. I'll give you the shortest version possible, just in case you're not familiar with it. Devilman's about a guy named Akira Fudo, who fuses with a demon named Ammon in order to fight demons to protect humanity. Now, one thing I said in my Devilman Crybaby review was I said that none of the Devilman animes carried over the build-up to him becoming Devilman. I was wrong. The OVAs did that really well. I assumed that it didn't just because of the clips I'd seen of it. Honestly, the OVA feels just as good as the manga in the build-up. It's got that whole creepy atmosphere. It has the things with Professor Asuka which Crybaby lacked, and it had the demon mask, so it had all of the relevant stuff that it needed to. On top of that, it just felt genuinely creepy, which is something you never get the feeling of in Crybaby. Now, with the OVAs, there were 3 OVA episodes. The first one was Devilman the Birth, released in 1987. The second one being Devilman the Demon Bird Siren, released in 1990. And finally, in 2000, we got Ammon Apocalypse of Devilman, which is considered a sequel to those two, so that's why I'm counting it as part of a trilogy. So with the first 2 OVAs, obviously the first episode only goes up to Akira's transformation, which is good because it's an hour long and it does the story very well justice. There's a few weird changes, like they added in this subplot with rabbits. However, one thing I do want to mention is some of these differences could just be because the OVAs aren't actually directly based on the manga, but are actually based on the novelization of Devilman, which were written by Go Nagai's brother, and have several differences. Nevertheless, I do still think the OVAs are by far the most accurate to the manga, even though they're not based directly on the manga. So the first episode just leads up to Akira's transformation, and the second episode leads up to the end of the battle with Siren. All of the battles and things are paced really well, and I honestly felt like there were no pacing issues in the first 2 episodes. And one thing I do want to mention about the second episode is Jinmin is actually fucking terrifying in that one. That is where one of the differences comes in, obviously. It just involves the characters that Jinmin's absorbed. The same differences were in Crybaby to an extent, although this is slightly different. Again, that's just because this is adapted from the novel, and Jinmin is a little bit different in the novel, but it's the same basic concept. Now on to the third episode. So the third episode is a little bit of an anomaly. It came 10 years after the second episode, was done by a completely different animation studio, has a completely different animation style, and neither adapts from the manga nor the novels. Instead, it adapts from a spin-off manga, Ammon the Dark Side of Devilman, which I am currently reading. And although the first 2 episodes I felt the pacing was perfect, I honestly think that the third episode does feel a little bit rushed. It's not unbearable, and it's still enjoyable to watch. It does move a little bit too quickly, in my opinion. This is where things start to get spoilery, so if you haven't seen or read Devilman, this is kind of your warning here. The manga spin-off, which the third OVA is based off of, is an alternate continuity in which when Miki dies, instead of Akira going to fight Satan and starting the war against the demons, instead, Akira loses his shit to the point where he loses control of Ammon, and Ammon takes control. He goes on a rampage, killing a bunch of people and a bunch of demons. It's interesting. As I said before, I haven't read Ammon the Dark Side of Devilman in its entirety yet. I'm still on the first chapter of it, but I can tell you right now that there is a lot more build-up in that than there is in this OVA. This OVA has definitely left out a lot of stuff, and I heard it goes in a completely different direction, too. Which is another thing I do want to mention, that the ending to this OVA, again, spoilers ahead, the ending to this OVA is a bit lackluster, because Akira regains control over Ammon by fighting him within himself, which was a pretty cool concept, but then after that, he sees Ryo, Satan, walks up to him, and instead of fighting him, just walks past him, just kind of looks at him, walks past him. That's the end. I felt that was kind of anticlimactic, but hey, whatever. Also, I will admit Crybaby handled Miki's death in a much better way, in my opinion, than this did, and I definitely think the character designs were better in the previous 2 OVAs. However, that could be partially due to the fact that the art style in Ammon the Dark Side of Devilman, which the third OVA is based off of, is a completely different art style than the original Devilman. Another thing I do want to make absolutely clear is I watched the subtitled version of this, because as many of you probably know, the dubs to the Devilman OVAs are absolutely horrible, and if you do watch it, I recommend watching the subtitled version because the dub just ruins it. It kills the atmosphere. I would love to see a full series of Devilman that tells the whole story in this style, in this way, even if it was just continuing from where the first two OVAs left off, but that'll probably never happen, so I guess Crybaby is a good next best thing for that, although I do think Crybaby has more pacing issues than this OVA series did, which I find kind of ironic because Crybaby was 10 episodes, whereas this was only 3 hour-long episodes, so Crybaby had an additional 2 hours on top of this, and it still couldn't beat the pacing. To be fair, Crybaby adapts the whole story, which this one doesn't. Another thing, if you're new to Devilman and you go and watch the third OVA, it will confuse you a bit because it skips forward several years into the middle of the Devilman Demon War, so it leaves out quite a lot of stuff between the second and third OVAs. I do think the third one is the most action-y of the three, and that's definitely fun, but I do think that the first two are much more Devilman. Anyway, if you've seen Crybaby and you've never seen the OVAs, I definitely recommend them. They're a much better telling of the same Devilman story, with, of course, a different ending because the third OVA is based on an alternate ending. It's hard to say with 100% certainty, but I honestly do feel that the OVAs are my favorite adaptation of Devilman, just because they do it so well. I think of the Devilman animes, this one's definitely the best. Obviously, there's things that some of them do better. For instance, I think the 70s version has the best version of Miki, whereas I think that Crybaby has the best version of Miki's death. I also think Crybaby did some things with Akira that weren't in the original manga that were better, like making him a little bit braver before his transformation, whereas in the original manga he was just a total wimp before his transformation. I do think Crybaby's crying mechanic was one of the stupidest things about it, but hey, whatever. And I think that Cyborg 009 vs. Devilman had the best version of Rio. So each of the animes have their ups and their downs, but I think that this one, this OVA series, is the best. And if you're a fan of Devilman and you want a good adaptation of the manga, watch the OVA series. Particularly the first 2 episodes, but the third one is good too. Anyway, this has been Fugitive Red Eye, and you have a great day.